Socrates, one of the most influential giants of Western philosophy, is the first topic for our classical political philosophy course. This video lecture is a brief contextual introduction to Socrates so as to better understand his thoughts on politics and society. Socrates, you see, is an enigma. Most of what we know of Socrates comes from his student Plato, to whom we will return next after Socrates. Socrates probably never wrote anything down. You see, he never wrote anything down, but he was committed to simple living and he was interested in questioning and cross-examining the everyday views and popular opinions of his fellow Athenians. He famously claimed that he knows nothing, and this is what made him the wisest of all. That's according to the Oracle of Delphi. You see, there's a story that one of Socrates' friends, he went up to the temple of Apollo at Delphi and consulted the oracle there. The oracle, by oracle means somebody who can foresee things, right? So the oracle told the friend of Socrates that Socrates is the wisest of all, right? And what made Socrates the wisest of all is that he was aware, and he alone and no one else was aware that he knows nothing. And the fact and his awareness that he knows nothing makes him the wisest of all. In stark contrast to others, to most of us, even to this day, and most of the Athenians in Socrates' days, was that most people did not know, or they knew nothing, yet they think they know everything. You see, there are some people who knows nothing and who claims that, yes, indeed, I do know nothing. Socrates was that kind of person. And in fact, the extent of the admission of your ignorance makes you wise and intelligent and knowledgeable. Whereas most people in general, even to this day and even in the age of Socrates, was that most people knew nothing, but in reality, most people knew nothing, but then they acted and thought as though they knew everything. You see, this is an example which is quite abundant. You see, abundant. You can find it everywhere, even in this day and age. You can, look at, for instance, in Nagaland, for example. Here we are in Nagaland, and most people in Nagaland, they think that they know a lot, when in reality they do know nothing. And the thing is, we cannot underestimate the contribution made by Socrates. Even though he wrote nothing, and even though he claimed to know nothing, he was the first to see the connection. And the potential conflict or opposition between the philosopher's search for the truth and the contradictory world of politics. You see, he was the first of the thinkers in Western history to see the contradiction between the truth, your quest, or a person's quest for truth and wisdom, and how it conflicts, or the opposition it has, with the world of politics. Thus, it raised a fundamental question concerning ethics and politics. In other words, is ethics, which is concerns for truth and justice, is ethics irrelevant in politics? Or does politics operate in a moral vacuum? Indeed, just a glance at the manner in which politics operates nowadays and is carried out will give us the answer as though it gives us an impression, right? It gives us this impression as though that the answer to these questions, such as, is ethics relevant in politics? No. By the way things are, and if you look at the way things are done in politics, you would never assume that there is ethics in politics. You would only assume that politics operates in a moral vacuum, in an environment where persons' actions or politicians' actions are unrestrained by any moral code of behavior. So this is a fundamental question which is relevant even to this day. And Socrates even though when we look at reality and see that and judge that maybe ethics is irrelevant in politics, Socrates was nevertheless was trying hard. For instance, Socrates was trying hard to show us that this may not be the case. For he is clear and adamant to demonstrate with his numerous dialogues with varied characters that politics cannot be wholly devoid of ethics. In other words, politics cannot be devoid of truth and justice. That there's some sort of ethical principles that needs to direct and that needs to operate in the realm of politics. For after all, it is for the politics deals with the betterment of the society, for the general good. It's aimed towards the general good. So without any sort of ethical principles to guide the actions of those who are participating in politics, you will have a human condition which is the worst of all, right? So Socrates tries to show how the quest for wisdom challenges the wisdom and knowledge of those acknowledged by society as experts, professionals, intellectuals, and leaders, right? And the manner in which he goes on to do this is through elencus, or what is known as the Socratic Dialogue, right? By Socratic Dialogue, it simply means a dialogue or a series of discussions involving or using series of questions and answers. For example, to give you an example of what Socrates meant, or the Socratic Dialogue is this. For example, I can, for instance, ask you a question. Let's say, what is justice? You may reply that it means being good and favorable to one's friends and families. To which, in return, I can answer by asking, does it mean that you should be only good to your friends and families and not care for those whom you do not know? And to which you may reply, yes. And to which I can ask, if you are a doctor, for instance, will you only care for your friends and family and not for those who you do not know? Obviously, maybe you may answer, no, that is not the case. So it goes on and on and on. It's a repetition of questions and answers until you reach to a certain place where both the discussions, where both the person under discussion comes to realization, oh, maybe what I thought was right is not really right. Maybe I need to reformulate or recalibrate or maybe refine or maybe rethink about what I thought was right. Yes, because by the end of this series of questions and answers, one would have realized that maybe what we thought we knew or what we thought we know about, say for instance, justice or truth may be incorrect, and that we may need to rectify our misconceptions and so on. Indeed, this is certainly a good way of examining one's preconceived notions about good or bad, right or wrong, beautiful and ugly, and so on. You see, because it is very essential, and that was the whole point of the Socratic method. He was trying to show us to question the existing principles or the existing traditions or the existing beliefs or the existing conventions of the society. Because just because it is believed, just because it is held to be true by many, it does not mean that it is true forever, that it does not change, because human society in general changes, and as time changes, so must our beliefs, our conventions, our traditions, customs, truth, justice, and so much more, right? So what made Socrates stand out and distinguish himself from those thinkers and philosophers before him is that he was the first to direct our attention, or first to direct the focus from the study of nature to the study of human affairs almost exclusively, right? We must realize that philosophers that preceded him were mainly concerned with the nature of things. In other words, there were philosophers or thinkers prior to Socrates. They were mostly concerned with questions such as what constitutes the human body, right? What is air? What is water? What is the constitution of the water? What are atoms, right? Or or what is known as or they were mainly concerned with questions such as what is the mathematical harmony of nature with the universe and so on. One very good example, a salient example, would be the Pythagorean Theorem, right? Remember, a square plus b square equals to c square. But if you actually think about it, such questions are irrelevant, right? In many ways, they are irrelevant to the nature of things in the human affairs, in the realm of human affairs. In the realm of human affairs, we deal with misery and war and disease and conflict and greed and poverty and inequality and so many evil things that we have to face in our daily lives. So those things are far apart from, for instance, Pythagorean theorem. What does a square plus b square plus c square has anything to do with how do I lead a good life? How do I ensure that society, that the people's welfare in a society are taken care of, right? So Socrates was the first to turn our attention, our focus of study from inquiring about the nature to inquiring about the human affairs, which I think is more relevant, and it's relevant even to this day. That's why we have this class, such as classical political philosophy, right? This almost exclusive turn or gaze towards the human affairs, ironically, also brought into question or also brought into conflict the quest for truth with the human realm of established conventions and beliefs of society. After all, the quest for truth and knowledge seldom verifies what society holds to be true or just, right? The public opinion generally held and believed by much of the people in the society can hardly stand firm under the scrutiny of a curious mind. And this is quite essential for us to understand, and in order to understand Socrates, because without understanding this, I think it is quite irrelevant as to it'll be quite difficult for one to understand what is Socrates on and on about justice and truth and virtues and etc. 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 So, in other words, when we turn our gaze exclusively to the human affairs, right? So, to be more precise, the realm of politics, right? In other words, by politics, it literally means how do we ensure a good society, right? Where the welfare of the people are taken care of, where an individual or persons in the society can excel in what they do and what they are. So this inquest, these examinations into the human affairs brought into conflict between the quest for truth, because we have to know the truth in order to establish a good society, right? In order for politics to give out, to ensure that it gives and produces what it is meant to produce, i.e. a good society, you need truth. But then it comes into conflict with the established conventions and beliefs of a society, right? This is very interesting. This is an interesting conflict, because whenever you try to seek truth, it nevertheless comes into conflict with some vested interest in the society, right? Which may bring you into conflict with those groups. For example, there was this recent case. It was 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. That once there were these cases in Manipur and Tripura where people or individuals who were criticizing the government, were put to prison on some falsified charges. Right, on some falsified charges. And such kind of examples substantiate the tension or the conflict between the truth and politics. You see, if you can't even criticize the government, which as a citizen you have every right to criticize the government, right? In the Constitution of India, you're given the freedom of speech, right? You can hold your government accountable. You have the right of say, freedom of press, right? So whenever these individuals decided to write something critical of the government in Manipur and in Tripura, those individuals were put to prison, right? They were put into prison on some falsified charges which nobody has ever heard of, and then they were put to prison to shut them up. You see, so this is a very good example of the tension between the truth and politics. Indeed, just recently in a news article this week, there was a statement issued that no academics in Manipur, right? No academics in Manipur, for example, will be allowed to write or publish anything critical of the government. Now, there we go. This is a very good example that substantiates, that proves the tension between the individual's search for truth and politics. Because if you actually think about it, like I said, it seems as though politics operates in a very different realm, right? Where it seems as though there is no regard for truth, no regard for, say, fairness, right? Anything that gets things done, those are the measures that are most welcomed. Anything that can expose any kind of misdeeds or wrongdoings of the leaders. Now, again, such kind of things are not encouraged, right? Just like the examples which I've mentioned. So this is a huge conflict, right? This conflict has a huge implication on everyday human affairs of politics. Politics, as we are all too aware and familiar with, is anything but just and truthful. People involved in politics, as experiences have frequently informed us, seldom care for truth or what is just or even what is actually good for the society in general. People who are too inquisitive about how politics is played out, or people trying to shed new lights by informing to the public in general about the misdeeds of society's leaders, are either shunned aside or put to prison, right? These are some cases. I mean, these questions which Socrates was very interested in and was trying to shed light on 2000 years ago is still relevant even to this day. Today you'll find so many scholars and academics whose voices are shut mainly because of this, right? Sometimes I know of circumstances, I know of an example where one of the academics wrote something very critical of the rebel groups here in Nagaland, NSNIM and NMBGs, and about the secrecy in which the framework agreement and the agreed positions are being propagated. And so that academic tried to expose how these groups are trying to mislead the people of the state and people of Nagas in general. And so what happened was that academic received threats to his life, right? Threats to his life, and even by his own community. Those rebel groups threatened the community, and the community put pressure on the academic to stop writing such kind of things, right? So you see, so such things happen. So the question which Socrates is asking, right? Can we let these things happen? Right? Is politics without ethics? Can we simply believe things just because we are told to believe? Should we do that? Should we just accept things as they are? Should we accept injustice? Maybe what we think is just may not be just if we simply accept things as they are. Maybe we should caution them. Maybe what society says is good must be cautioned. Maybe the authorities must be cautioned. The values, the beliefs, and the customs and traditions which we hold dear must be cautioned. That was the main idea behind Socrates, right? And which we will know that it is, which we can ascertain that indeed those cautions are very, very essential in the human realm, in the affairs of human society. Hence, you can see the relevance of the question asked 2000 years ago by Socrates. Indeed, Socrates had to pay with his life in trying to make people aware of this conflict, and in trying to show that politics without a hint of truth and justice, that is, without ethics, is the worst form of human condition for any society, right? A truism that continues to resonate even to this day.